To get the ball rolling, however, David is ready in the wings with his first experiment today. It's all yours, David.
I've been looking for this T-shirt for ages. I couldn't find it, and of course it was tucked away in the middle of my bedroom underneath a whole lot of other clothes, and now it's covered in creases. It's got creases going just about everywhere. Now, these creases, of course, will come out in the wash, and I'll be able to iron them out as well. But there are some creases which are actually permanent, like in the trousers that I've got sitting down here. We've got a permanent crease which is actually in this woolen trouser. Now, how do you get a permanent crease in a pair of trousers or any other bit of cloth? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and we need to go over here to talk about that. Now, sitting on the table here, I have two cloths, two bits of wool. Now, what I'm going to do to one of these is add some of this chemical solution which is sitting on the table. So we need to soak that in part of the sponge there, and then put a generous dollop of that down the centre of this cloth here, this piece of wool. So let's do that. Nice. Excellent. Now what we're going to do is, in just a moment, I've got to do some ironing. We're going to iron this into a different form. So let's go over here and get rid of these trousers to the side. And we need to fold that over like so, and we'll fold the other one over as well. And then we shall iron a crease into that. So, like this. Now, basically, when you put a permanent crease into something, it's a little bit like doing a perming of hair. And I'll explain how that is so in just a moment. We'll put this crease in like so, and then we need to wash both cloths. So let's bring them over here and put them into this little bit of detergent and warm water that we've got sitting here as well. Now, brilliant. We'll let that sit there for just a little while, and we'll have a little bit of a chat. Now, basically, in hair or in wool, we have long strands of protein. And when we bend them or crease them into strained positions, what will actually happen is when they get wet, they'll spring back into their regular positions, unless we do something to them. Now, when we perm hair, what we actually do is we unlink some of the links between the protein molecules, between these long protein molecules. And then we reform those links when we put them into a different position. And that's exactly what we're going to try and do here with our creases here. So we need to have that sit there for just a few seconds longer. Then we can drag it out like so, and we'll squeeze it out as well and see if we've managed to get ourselves a permanent crease in one of these. Not very colour fast. We've got blue going into our bowl there at the moment. So let's spread these out and see which one has got the more prominent crease. Let's have a look. There's a bit of a crease running through that one down the centre there. And if we pull out the other one as well, let's have a look at this one and see whether that one is as creased. It's not as creased there. So we do actually have a crease, which you'll be able to see, just running through the centre of this piece of cloth. So we've actually managed to put a permanent crease with this solution here. So we've managed to reform those links when we have it in the creased position. And that's exactly how we're able to do it with those pants that I had lying on the ironing board just a second ago. Meanwhile, I'm going to have to get the creases out of this if I'm going to wear it, so it's to the iron with me, I'm afraid.
I've always wondered how they did that. Excellent. Now, we've talked about the fastest moving creatures on this show before, but do you know what the slowest moving mammal in the world is? Give it some thought and see if you can come up with the answer before I do when we come back after this short break. The slowest moving mammal in the world is the three-toed sloth. Its top speed is 1.8 to 2.5 metres per minute at ground level. The reason it is so slow is partly to do with its diet, lots of green leaves. Leaves are not very energy-rich food source and are quite difficult to digest. Therefore, sloths use intestinal bacteria to help break down their food, but it can take up to 100 hours for one meal to pass through their system. They have a very slow metabolic rate and spend much of their time hanging upside down from branches of trees in Central and South America. They never groom, and their coats get a greenish tinge from the algae that grows on its fur. And their fur grows in the opposite direction to other animals to prevent it from becoming waterlogged in its rainforest environment. Now to someone who's no sloth, Joseph is out to shine a light on Edwina Nichols of Shell Harbour in New South Wales' question, what is lead lighting?
Lead lighting is one of the oldest forms of glasswork, with some European pieces dating back to the 14th century, Well, Callum, it's a beautiful way of using glass, but how's it actually done?
The glass is cut to a pattern and then into small individual pieces, and then we use lead to hold the glass all together in the final panel.
Well, let's start with the pattern. Is that just basically a drawing on a piece of paper?
Basically just a drawing on a piece of paper, yeah.
And then you aim to sort of fit in the glass to that pattern?
We cut the glass to the pattern inside the lines, and when you finally finish that, then you assemble it with the lead.
So how do you actually cut the glass?
With a glass cutter.
Oh, makes sense.
This is actually a glass cutter. This is a pencil grip glass cutter. It's got a tungsten roller wheel. Unlike most people think that diamonds cut the glass. Diamonds cut glass well, but they don't go around corners too well. So we use a rolling wheel.
What about the actual colours of the glass? How do they get those?
Actually done in manufacture. They're manufactured in those colours with the textures on them. You have the different coloured glasses, and they also come with a different texture on them as well. So that's the way we get them.
So once you've got all your pieces fitted onto the pattern, how do you join it together?
With the lead. Actually use lead to wrap in between the glass, and then it's all soldered together at the joints.
Now, I guess it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, but I saw you using nails before. What's nails got to do with it?
Oh, as you're putting it together, you want it to hold firm, so you nail it in. As you go along, you're nailing it in, just holding it into place whilst you get your other piece of glass and wrap your lead.
And apart from windows, what else can you use lead light for?
You can use lead light for making lamps, for terrariums, anything really that you can shape glass with.
It takes a trained lead light artist around 6 hours to make a standard size window, but once installed, they can add a whole new dimension to a building for many years.
I've definitely seen them before, but never knew how they did it. Thanks there to Callum Campbell for showing us the light. David's up now with another experiment for us to wrap our brains around.
And don't you just hate that? You're about to sneeze and it stops. I think I'm actually starting to come down with something, and of course I'm going to have to take myself to the doctor after the show. And he or she will probably prescribe me with some of these little guys down there, some little capsules which will contain a medicine which will hopefully actually make me better. Now, I'm sure you've had to swallow one of those guys before, but there's some interesting science in these little capsules, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, what I've got sitting in this little beaker here in front of me is actually hydrochloric acid. Now, this is going to be a little mini stomach. Of course, we've got hydrochloric acid actually in our stomachs, and that helps us to actually loosen up the cellulose and the meat fibres and things when we're eating. Now, what I'm going to do to that is add our little capsule, of course. Now, this is actually hydrochloric acid, as I said, so I'm going to put on some gloves here to make sure I'm safe, put on some goggles here as well, and turn on a little magnetic stirrer so that we can get the stomach acid that we've got sitting here to actually churn around. So I'll just turn this guy on, like so, and you'll see that that little white magnet down the bottom there starts to spin around. Now, to that, of course, I need to add one of these little capsules. So I put that on there, and if we can then just put that very carefully into my stomach there. Now, of course, what's going to happen is hopefully the capsule will actually dissolve. The drug can then be released into our bodies and fight all of the disease or the bug that we've actually managed to get into our body there. So I'm just going to give that a little bit of a stir with my thermometer here as well. We'll point that down. Now, this acid, this hydrochloric acid, has actually been heated up to about body temperature. So that's around about 38 degrees Celsius. So let's just push that down a little bit there and get it mixed around even more. And what will happen is, as I say, we'll actually, and it's starting to happen now, we're starting to eat away at that outer capsule. Now, there's also an inner capsule in there as well. And that inner capsule I'll explain in just a moment. Meanwhile, we've got to dissolve this outer capsule, and there it goes. And all those little beads have just started to be released there. Now, surrounding those beads, we have another capsule, because sometimes you don't want to have that drug actually released into your stomach, because the acid can sometimes interfere with that drug and actually destroy it. One of these drugs is something called erythromycin, which we actually use to treat tonsillitis. So that wouldn't be too good if it gets to your stomach, then just gets destroyed and doesn't go into your body to fight the bug. So we've got to actually then get another capsule, open that up at another point. And we do this in our small intestine. In fact, in the first part of a small intestine, we actually secrete some sodium hydroxide, or a base. So we've got acid in the stomach, but we've got a base which is actually secreted a little bit further down. So let's get rid of our acid here. Let's just siphon that off a little bit, like so. We'll pour it off. There we go, all the way in there. We've lost a few of those little lumps of our orange dye there, but we'll put that back, and now I'll add some sodium hydroxide to the top of that. And what'll happen then is we'll be able to eat out the second capsule. So let's pour that into the top, like so. Get that stirring around. And in just a second, oops, turn that stirrer up just a bit, you'll see that we'll actually start to release that other dye. It's turning a little bit darker there. And there we go, we've actually released that dye in there as well. So that drug will then be released into your body, it will be absorbed by your blood, and of course we'll get to work fighting the bug that you may actually have in your system. And meanwhile, I'm actually breathing a little bit clearer here. I don't think I had a bug at all. Must have just been some dust in the air or something. That's good.
A well-encapsulated demonstration, David. It's good that you resolved the dissolve. Coming up in the show, Brad gets to the point with some scorpions. In 1911, a Dutch guy named Heike Ons discovered that when he cooled the metal mercury to near absolute zero, its resistance to electrical currents completely disappeared. He had discovered superconductivity. When electrical resistance no longer exists, electricity can travel in a loop within the material forever. External magnetic fields cannot enter because they cause an equal and opposite force to flow against them, repelling them. New superconducting materials are being discovered every year that work at very low temperatures. However, scientists are still trying to understand how it all works. Scorpions tend to be a good thing to keep away from, but have you ever wondered, like Trey James of Mount Gravatt, Queensland, how a scorpion stings? Brad was stung by the question and scuttled off to dig up the answer.
This is a scorpion stinger, but thankfully this isn't life-size. I'm looking at this through a microscope here at the Search and Discover section at the Australian Museum. Now, Mike, thankfully this isn't life-size.
Yes, this is quite a small scorpion by comparison to another one we've got here, which is an African beast. But you can see the size difference when you compare, say, this one, which is an Australian wood scorpion, and this one, which comes from the deserts of Africa.
Okay, so we do actually get scorpions in Australia?
Oh yeah, we've got about 30-odd species.
Oh, goodness me. And where are they found in Australia?
All over. You get some sorts, different sorts in forests, you get different sorts out in the desert. Most of ours are relatively dry land scorpions, as you'd expect in Australia. And we have a big complement of a thing called Urodacus in the drier parts of Australia. The rest are in the rainforests, the forests of Australia.
So if you happen to live in sort of a wooded suburbia, would you find many of these around your house if you looked hard enough?
You have to look. Certainly people get surprised when they find scorpions, but they are not that uncommon. If you go out into the forest, say, and you look under bark or in leaf litter, places like that, you'll find scorpions in not enormous numbers, but enough to be interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now what we're looking at on the TV here is probably, well, I suppose the business end of the scorpion, that part that everyone should stay away from. Now, how does a scorpion use that to sting someone?
Yeah, that's the stinger. It's got a venom gland inside this bit here, this bulbous bit, and delivers the venom highly efficiently through this needle-like stinger here. And it uses it both for offence and defence. Depending on the sort of scorpion you're talking about, you could have an animal which has these large claws and simply dismembers its prey, takes it apart without using the sting, or you could also use the sting to initially immobilise it by injecting the venom and then pull it apart. Lovely thought, lovely way to eat.
Now, does the scorpion sting from the front or does it sting at the back there?
No, it stings from the back of the stinger, if you like, here, yes. It doesn't have any venom in its jaws, like a spider does, for example. All the venom is in the stinger, and it simply uses that, as I said, to immobilise the prey.
Yeah. All right, we might leave this big guy there and be thankful that we don't have any of those big ones in Australia.
Sure thing, Brad. They were huge. Certainly a story with a sting in its tail. There seems to be a bit of a convention in the studio today. I wonder what Joseph and Lisa are doing here. Oh, well, I guess I'll see. David's back over on his side of the studio. What are you doing now, David?
Balloons, they tend to go bang very, very easily, don't they? But if I was to put this balloon on the table here and start pressing down on it, it takes a fair amount of pressure before this actually bursts. We tend to think of them as very, very fragile, but they're not that fragile at all. They can actually support quite a bit of weight. Not too much weight, though. If you push too hard, the balloon will eventually burst a little bit like so. But that's not good enough for me today. I want to do things big and spectacular. So I've invited a whole lot of friends in today. So Tara, if you'd like to come in, and I'll get Lisa and also Joe to come in here as well. Now, how are you guys?
Good, how are you?
What are we doing?
Yes.
Big happy family. Got the balloons. Excellent. Well, did you see me burst that balloon a second ago?
We
did.
Yeah.
You saw how hard it was for me to actually burst that balloon, right? Okay. Well, what I want you guys to do is, in just a second, I want everyone to stand on top of these balloons, but not burst them.
But they will burst if we stand
I
on
don't
them.
think
Saw how strong that balloon was.
3 of us
Not all
together at
3 of
once.
us.
They'll
Oh,
go.
let's just give it a go, okay? Trust me, I'm a scientist. Okay?
Trust you.
Here we go. Let's whack this on top, like so. This
Oh,
is
that's
what I'm
all
going to
right.
put in between, okay?
Okay,
so
that's
this
all
is
right.
going to make it a little bit easier. So let's put that on the top there.
Do you promise they won't burst?
I promise they won't burst. They won't burst,
saw
Lisa.
that
Okay. Okay. Lisa, up on one side. We'll get Tara up on the other side, okay?
Can we
so
use you as
you can
a-
use me and Joe to help you get up there.
So gonna burst.
Up there. See, look at that. Up you go. That was just
Go.
Up you go. Just to balance it out. You've lost your mic there.
okay.
Excellent. And Joe, if you want to come up round the
no.
back there as well.
Hang on.
There we go. We got that. Now Joe's up there as well.
Oh no, this is where they're gonna go.
Look at that. They're all there. Excellent. Whoa. I think we can hop off now. I think we've proved our point. Lisa's little heart's going boom.
Stand on there together.
But I did prove my point there. Look, you guys were able to stand up there easily.
We only
very,
burst a couple.
few
Wasn't
bursts,
too
a few
bad.
bursts, but it wasn't too bad at all.
No, that wasn't too bad.
David, why didn't they all burst?
Why didn't they burst? Well, basically, when you stood on that tabletop there, what you did was actually spread out your weight over that big surface area. So the balloons all were able to hold up your weight, okay? So it wasn't just one balloon holding all of your weight, it was all of those balloons holding all of your weight equally, okay? So that's what the table did there.
Wow, fascinating.
Cool.
In fact, I've
So
got
much
another
fun.
question for you.
Yeah.
David, we're doing a story on aerosol cans,
Oh,
and I'm just wondering why that one.
Oh, no!
And just to top things off, we just thought...
Oh, man!
Hold on, missed the back of your head.
And it's only because we love you.
That bit there as well. Oh,
We're just getting you back for all the practical jokes you played on us.
oh, you had fun. Well, there
We did and we love you. Is there any more?
Ah,
It's always an unpleasant experience, but have you ever thought to yourself, how do they make a cast? Well, Julie Lang of Dudley Park, Western Australia did and wrote into us. Lisa, who has experienced casting sessions of a different nature, went off to check out what it was all about.
Ever broken your arm or leg? It's not the most pleasant experience, but thanks to doctors, they have an easy way that'll help you recover in no time. Dr. Pincus, today we're taking a look at casts. What can you tell me about them? Why do we need them?
We use casts for 3 reasons really in hospital, Lisa. The first reason is we use them if someone comes in with an acute fracture that needs to be manipulated to put it in a good position. We put them in a cast and that holds the fracture until it's healed, gives them good pain relief. Secondly, we use casts on occasions when there's an emergency situation where we just need to get a patient from, say, the roadside to the hospital and they can have a temporary cast put on. In the third place, we use casts in this setting, the Children's Hospital, is post-operatively. Either when we've cut a bone or moved tendons or cut muscles, we put the cast on to hold the limb until the tissues or the bone have healed.
Are there different types of casts?
There are, Lisa. There are generally 2 sorts of casts we use here. We use plaster of Paris, which is a very old-fashioned cast, but a very good one, and we use fiberglass cast.
And how do you apply the cast?
Lisa, the cast is applied by simply putting it in water so that it's wet, and that sets off the process which makes it hard. It's then unwrapped around the limb after some wool has been put over the skin to protect the skin. And then just as it starts to warm up, as it starts to harden, we generally just push the fracture or hold the fracture into position so that it's moulded.
And why shouldn't you get a cast wet?
You shouldn't get your cast wet. If you've got a fiberglass cast on, the fiberglass itself is actually waterproof. but the material underneath it, the wool that we put to protect the skin from the fiberglass, gets sodden and it's very, very smelly. And most children would have to be put outside if they got their cast wet because it'd be too smelly for their parents to cope with.
Oh, no, and it can do damage to your skin, can't it?
It's just skin will become quite macerated and yucky and you'll need to come in to have it taken off. There are waterproof casting materials. We don't tend to use them. They're extremely expensive and they don't offer huge advantages.
And how long do you have to wear the cast for?
It really depends on the reason that we've got the cast on for, Lisa. Sometimes a cast really only needs to be on for 10 or 12 days if it's just resting an injured limb, but unfortunately some of our kids need to be in cast for many months, sometimes 3 or 4 months.
And how do you remove it?
The old-fashioned way was to use some shears like this, and this was slid under the casting material and then cut. It's a fairly fearsome looking instrument and it takes a long time and it can be quite uncomfortable. We use an even more fearsome instrument now, and this is a plaster saw which also looks and sounds absolutely awful, Lisa, but this is the best way of removing a cast. It's much safer and much, much more comfortable. The key issue for people to understand is that even though that's a cutting blade which looks like it's from a saw that you'd use on a wood bench, it in fact doesn't go round and round. It just simply vibrates backwards and forwards. So I can push it onto my skin as hard as you like and there'll be no blood. And I'll show it on you, Lisa, and you can see just how...
Oh, that tickles!
But that's all it does. It tickles. It won't cut you. Doctors are well trained in the use of these, and it's a very quick and effective way of removing the cast.
Well, thanks very much, Dr. Pincus, for your advice today on casts, and hopefully I won't have to wear one in the near future.
There you go, Julie. Another house sold for you by Y. And thanks to Dr. Pincus of the Royal Children's Hospital, Brisbane, for the medical advice. Well, that brings this episode and, in fact, this series of Y to a close. On behalf of Brad, David, Lisa and Joseph, I would like to say thanks to everyone who helped make Y possible, and especially to you guys for watching. I hope to see you again soon, and until we do, from everyone here, have fun, take care and keep asking why. Bye-bye.
Tara is dressed by Bessie Head. Lisa, Joseph and Brad are dressed by Brothers Nielsen. Y chooses to stay at Quest serviced apartments throughout Australia and New Zealand. Cast and crew prefer network car and truck rentals. Y is produced by Southern Star Concept for the Nine Network Australia.